Michiel Kaga wakes up in a stable. After looking around, he realizes that he seems to be in a game. Since he can see his stats, he also has the ability to evaluate things that come into his sight. After searching the stable, he finds a sword and a ring, which improves interpersonal relationships. After leaving the stable, he realizes that he is in a village. Just then, a group of bandits attacks the village. Michiel hides behind the stable, unsure of what he should do. He notices that the villagers are losing the battle, so Michiel decides to attack the bandit chief when he is distracted. The bandit boss is several levels higher than Michiel, but Michiel still kills him easily. After killing the bandit boss, Michiel quickly kills the remaining bandits. While Michiel rests, the village chief thanks Michiel and invites him to his house. Michiel agrees. Later, the village chief gives Michiel the items that belonged to the bandits Michiel killed. Michiel notices that one of the objects has been exchanged and notifies the village chief. Later in a room, Michiel tries to disconnect from the game, but he can't no matter how hard he tries. At that moment he realizes that this is a real world, not a game. After regretting killing someone, Michiel pulls himself together as he thinks he did the right thing. Later, the village chief calls Michiel to tell him that they found out who stole the equipment. In this world, everyone has a card attached to them that shows their stats. The village chief says that the thief will be turned into a slave. He also gives Michiel the bandits' intelligent cards and tells Michiel that someone will take him to the city the next day. The next day, a villager takes Michiel to Vale City where they sell all the bandits' former belongings. After that, they go to sell the thief to the slave market, selling him for a price of 30,000 nars. Nars is the currency of this world. After finishing all business with Michiel, the villager leaves. The slave market owner invites Michiel to talk. During the conversation, the merchant introduces Michiel to a girl named Roxanne. She is a slave. Michiel is very interested in her. The merchant tells Michiel that he will sell her to him for 420,000 nars. The merchant gives Michiel 5 days to get the money. Michiel is determined to buy Roxanne. Michiel has 330,000 nars, so he must get more than 70,000 nars. Because the only ways to get quick money before the deadline are enter the dungeon and kill monsters, or hunt bandits. Michiel decides to enter a dungeon, which appeared near the city. Inside the dungeon, Michiel kills tree-like monsters while testing his skills. When his day of hunting ends, he only gets less than 300 nars. The next day, in the dungeon, Michiel enters a secret room thinking he would find a treasure. However, it was a nest of monsters, so he is forced to fight for a long time without rest. Later, after leaving the dungeon, Michiel finds a crowd gathered outside the city. As he approaches, he sees the dead body of a man. One of the people there tells him that it is the dead body of a bandit. After thinking about it, Michiel decides to hunt bandits to raise the money to buy Roxanne. Michiel searches for bandits in the city, but finds none. So he decides to search the slums of the city. With 3 days left before the deadline to buy Roxanne, Michiel investigates the slums at night. He discovers a bandit, whom he follows to his lair. He sees that there are many bandits, so he decides to get more information before attacking. The innkeeper where Michiel is staying tells Michiel that the bandits in town are having a power struggle. Michiel decides to take advantage of the power struggle. After investigating for several days, Michiel decides to attack the bandits 1 day before the deadline. At night, Michiel tricks a bandit to enter the bandits' lair. Once inside, Michiel manages to kill 4 bandits before fleeing. The next day, Michiel uses the intelligent cards of the bandits he killed to claim the reward for them. After claiming the reward, Michiel is very happy, because he was able to collect all the money to buy Roxanne. Later at the slave store, Meikyū successfully buys Roxane. Later, back at the inn, Meikyū tells Roxane that he comes from a faraway place, so he needs Roxane to explain things he doesn't understand. Meikyū takes Roxane to buy the necessary things for the dungeon, equipment, and clothes for Roxane. Afterwards, back at the inn, Meikyū notices that Roxane is very serious about their equipment. At night, Meikyū and Roxane wash each other. After getting clean, they both have a very passionate night. The next day after waking up, Meikyū tells Roxane that they will go to the dungeon. As they prepare to go to the dungeon, Meikyū asks Roxane how to add skills to the equipment. Roxane says that he needs skill crystals and the blacksmith class. Meikyū takes Roxane to the dungeon using the warp skill. Inside the dungeon, Meikyū learns from Roxane that there are magic crystals which are used to collect magic from defeated monsters. After a day of hunting, at the inn, Meikyū talks to Roxane. He tells her that he will not return to his homeland, so he will stay with her forever. The next day, since Meikyū has no magic crystals, they go to the guild to buy them. Afterwards, inside the dungeon, Meikyū and Roxane fight monsters. Meikyū notices that Roxane is very skilled at fighting. Meikyū uses the ability that makes his magic crystal improve faster than Roxane's. Meikyū has the ability to change his class and the class of his companions whenever he wants. They both decide to fight without weapons, because Meikyū wanted the monk class to gain healing skills. After fighting without weapons for a while, they both obtain the monk class. In the evening, at the inn, Meikyū and Roxane wash each other before having another passionate night. The next day, Meikyū and Roxane arrive at the boss room of the first floor of the dungeon. The boss is a tree-like monster, which uses its arms as a whip to attack. They both defeat the boss very easily, thus managing to open the door to the second floor of the dungeon. The boss drops a leaf with which Roxane acquired the herbalist class. Meikyū decides to fight the boss again to get the herbalist class as well. During the second fight against the boss tries to use a spell, but Meikyū interrupts it with his sword. They also easily defeat the boss again. Meikyū obtains the herbalist class and uses it to make medicine. Before entering the second level of the dungeon, they decide to buy various kinds of medicine at the Adventurers Guild. In the second floor of the dungeon, tree-like monsters and caterpillars appear. From the second to the third floor of the dungeon, the monsters appear in groups of 2. Due to an oversight, Meikyū is restrained by a caterpillar's ability, but manages to kill the caterpillar easily. Later, while walking through the streets of Vale City, Meikyū and Roxane see a bandit watching the slave market. Meikyū decides to tell Alan, the slave merchant, about the bandit watching him. Alan says that the bandits may try to attack the mansion that night. Meikyū then offers to help protect the mansion due to a request from Roxane. That night, Roxane wakes up Meikyū telling him that it is time. Afterwards, Meikyū and Roxane meet with Alan and his fighting slaves, getting ready for the arrival of the bandits.
I hope you liked the recap. If so, don't forget to subscribe and like it.